Hello and welcome to the Avrum Rosensweig Show.
Welcome to one of the internet's best podcasts, where we dive deep into the lives of the extraordinary and fascinating people who leave an indelible mark on our world. Join us as we explore their captivating stories, remarkable achievements, and unique perspectives that shape history and inspire generations. Get ready to embark on a journey through the lives of inspiring people unlike any other.
Hello, folks, and welcome to the Avrum Rosensweig Show. My name is indeed Avrum Rosensweig, and of course, today we are talking about Torah. We're talking about issues within the Torah through the lens of classic literature, and this series is called Parsha and Prose, and I do it together with my very dear friend, wonderful educator, Rabbi Shlomo. How are you, Rabbi?
First of all, thank you for your kind words. I'm very well, and I am looking forward Sunday. Hopefully, we are going to see the hostages back, which is a major event. At the same time, I must tell you that I dread the moment that they will come back. We don't know in what condition. We even don't know if how many of them are alive. So this is going to be a very difficult day. It's going to be a great day for the families who are going to reunite with their loved ones. But at the same time, as I said, I dread. I cannot find a better word for this. Because I'm sure that many people are going to, after so many months and almost 500 days of waiting for their loved one, they might not see them alive. And I think for the Israeli society, it's going to be a very, very difficult day. A simcha on one hand and a terrible sorrow on the other one. How you can handle the two together, I don't know.
You know, I was speaking with someone who's very much involved with the IDF, and I asked him, what is the IDF response internally, off the records? I don't want to say his name. What's the response to the hostage deal? And he said, like you're saying exactly, it's mixed emotions.
And it's not only about this particular day when they return. You know, this is a big concern. What will happen next? Because I'm sorry to say, but again, Jewish blood, on one hand, is very expensive. You know, for every released hostage, you free 30 to 50 murderers. You can see really like the value of every Jewish person, or every hostage. At the same time, what kind of message it sends, and what is going to be the about the security of people outside if a country, a state, is willing to go that far, and basically to succumb to the demands of these barbarians. It put, I'm afraid, every free person in the world in danger. Because right. you can see how easy it is to release murderers with blood on their hands. How you do it? By killing other people, by kidnap other people, by raping other people. That's very concerning. So besides what is going to happen on Sunday, I think that every person should have some concerns about the future.
Rabbi, we have a very big task on our hands. The ADL just came out with a report after studying people around the world, non-Jews, as to their feelings about Jews, and asking them very particular questions about who are the Jewish people, what do they stand for, what do you not like about them, what do you like about them. 46% have a problem with us. 46%. A previous report done a few years ago was half of that. And some of the statements that were made was, all we do is think about ourselves. You know, we're constantly involved in mourning about the Holocaust. We speak about it way too much. I would like to tell our listeners and viewers, in light of what you're saying and this ADL report, firstly, look at the report. It's online. All you have to do is Google ADL report anti-Semitism. That we need to embrace our friends. Those 54% out there who either don't have views about the Jewish people or like the Jewish people. It's our responsibility as an individual, as a collective, to go out there and make friends with the non-Jew who are who like us or who don't know more about us. It's a huge task.
Absolutely. That's on one hand, and thank God we have friends that we not always know about. People who raise money, people who go to Israel. Actually, I just spoke to someone that told me that he was so surprised to find people coming from places even like Germany that feel that at this moment they have to be with the Jewish people. Unfortunately, they are the minority, but we have to appreciate it. And a person like this, as we say, that one candle can bring much more light in a dark place than the darkness itself. We have to see these people who are enlightened from within. They really understand what we stand for, what happened here. One person like this might actually chase away the darkness of 100 people around him. And we have to remember that with all difficulties and with everything that we see in the media and in social media, we still have many friends. Still, we have many decent people who understand what Israel stands for and what happened in October 7th and even before. And we have to be their friends and to find them and to cooperate with them. I want to say something in general that I think we all have to think about. The response after the Holocaust, especially in America, I think was two different ways to deal with the issue. One was, we are going to be nice to everyone, so they will have no reason to hate us because we are going to be exactly like them. So why should they hate us if my neighbor is American, I'm American, I'm going to be nice to him, and he is going to be nice to me. This was one hand. Another one was, no. Yeah, we had enough of it. We have to be strong, and you saw some movement that said a Jew has to be strong. You don't know when and where the next calamity is going to come from. I think what happened in October 7th, the two approaches collapsed. On one hand, we have the best army or one of the best armies in the world, and people on scooters managed to invade, kill, rape, kidnap. This is a major psychological blow to everyone, on one hand. At the same time, our niceness not always paid off. We could see what happened in universities that many of them are sponsored by Jewish people who wanted to make good in the world and donated unbelievable amounts of money. If you go to all these lists of philanthropists, you are going to see many more names of Jews than their weight in the entire population. And I'm not talking about like 2% more. I'm talking about 20, 30, 40% more than the entire population when we are less than 1% of the population. And I think we have to take some time now and to think, where do we stand? How do we continue from here? And maybe once in a few decades, maybe once in 100 years, like it happened in the Holocaust, maybe it happened today, we have to take some time for ourselves to analyze what happened and to find ways to react to what happened, because we cannot be after October 7th, 2023, the same people that we were a day before that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Rabbi, in that light, you're going off to a Shabbaton this Shabbat with your students. Kol hakavod, I'm so excited for you. That must be wonderful. Would you consider, or do you consider, taking non-Jewish friends on such a trip? Do you bring in non-Jews into your school so that your student body could have a greater understanding of the world in which we live? And on the flip side, for the non-Jewish individuals to have a good appreciation of who we are, or more so? Does that happen within your construct?
So to be honest with you, Jewish education is a cocoon, and many of our students, once they arrive to university, they recognize it, sometimes criticize it even. But in education, you have stages. If you are not strong within yourself, you will find it impossible to deal with influence from the outside. And I do believe that, especially in the first years, like we take care as parents for the nutrition of our children, teaching them values, building their character, we have to do quite the same with our Jewish students. First of all, they have to know, what does it mean to be Jewish? Like, who am I? The question that, by the way, Moshe Rabbeinu asked in our Parsha, who am I?
Yes.
And if you don't know the answer to it, you will find yourself torn between the world outside and yourself. You know that you are Jewish, but you don't know what exactly it means. And here is a nice non-Jew, what the problem? But we do try to prepare them for the world after chat in this example, or in Jewish education, to meet, people in university which are going to be very different. Some of them are going to be anti-Semites. So we try to prepare them for that. I certainly believe that until you build a strong Jewish identity, maybe people should not get involved so much with others. But I will encourage it, absolutely encouraging it. And we try to build, by the way, our program to this moment, because we know that they are not going to be in the Jewish cocoon for the rest of their life. We know that very well, and we try to prepare them well academically, but also in terms of Jewish identity. And I think we are quite successful, Baruch Hashem. The majority, not majority, it's like almost 100% of our students, they marry inside the community. And
Oh, really?
yeah, absolutely. And I see it as a major achievement of the Jewish day schools all over, but especially here. We are very proud of it, but this is only the minimum. We don't want to feed our students only the minimal and basic food, the staples. We try to make them really really proud in being Jewish. And I think this is part of our program too. Like in this podcast, we try to bring some light and to make people who think about what we say proud about who they are.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Shivim Panim part of our show, 70 Faces of Torah. And within it, Rabbi Shlomo Gomorrah and I like to schmooze a little bit about some personal things and some things having to do with Israel and the Jewish people and the world in which we live. Within that, I would just like to say a prayer for the hostages. I think it's probably appropriate to say it at the top of this podcast today, as a deal has almost been struck when we're doing this recording. It hasn't yet, but God willing, it will be. And the prayer goes as follows. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless, preserve, and protect the captives and the missing soldiers of the IDF and the citizens of Israel. May God rescue them from captivity and speedily restore them in peace in the merit of the prayers of this holy congregation who pray for them. May the Holy One, blessed be God, show them mercy, increase their strength, remove their pain, and send them a recovery of body and spirit. May God return them to the bosom of their family swiftly and soon. And let us all say amen. So much of this prayer, which we have been saying for a long time, is so reflective of the Parsha that we're learning this week, when the Jewish people became enslaved in Egypt and the terrible, terrible hardship that they had gone through. I would also like to add within Shivim Panim that this podcast exists because of supporters. Sponsorship connects your brand with our engaged, values-driven audience and ensures we can continue creating the high-quality content our viewers and listeners love and rely upon. Please, please, please be in touch with us, either through my email or through the rabbi's email, and ask us how you might sponsor the show or perhaps bring advertising to it as well. It's crucial, like anything else, that there's a financial component to this podcast so that we can bring it to you, God willing, for years to come. Rabbi, today...
Avrum, if I can add something, because I really think about it. Many shuls, for example, bring like a scholar in residence, and they pay quite a lot of money. At the end of the day, again, it's wonderful initiative, and most of the people that I hear in my shul really can enhance and to enlighten people more than I can do. I will be very honest about it. But at the end of the day, they talk to 200 people, and it's fantastic. Our podcast reach hundreds of people, sometimes close to 2,000, depends on the episode. And I think it's a wonderful way to remember or to honor someone to sponsor a program like this, because like for a fraction of what people pay to bring a scholar of residence, I think people are entertained and listen and learn and being educated, and you know it very well because every week we get some emails praising this podcast, and I'm not saying it to brag about it, but to say how important it, I think, to many people. So if people have Yom Huledet, a birthday, or to remember someone, I think it's a wonderful opportunity to do something special for them and to dedicate one of our episodes to their memory. Again, as I said many times, I don't get any like financial benefit from it. That's not the reason why we do the podcast. But in kemach and Torah, if you don't have the flour, you cannot provide also Torah. So it comes together, and I had few opportunities that people ask me as a present for a birthday of a grandparent or something like that. What can you bring, like a person who Baruch Hashem have a lot, and so they honored them with a shir, with divrei Torah, with inspiration. That's a wonderful opportunity, I think.
Man, you're terrific at this. You really are.
No, I'm not
I did.
terrific. I just think about things that happened to me in the past. I'll tell you one story that really
Yeah,
like changed my view on it.
yeah.
I got one day a request of a family, very esteemed family in this community that really did a lot in many ways here in Chad and elsewhere. People who really care about continuity in the Jewish community. And they invited me, and they paid for it, to be honest, for 3 lectures for their grandfather, who is he loves Agnon. So they asked me if I can do it, and of course I love to do it. And when I spoke to this person afterwards, he's today close to 100. He said this was one of the best birthday gifts he ever got.
Yeah.
So I just learned from experience of other insightful people because I wouldn't think about it. But this family approached me, and I thought, wow, that's very noble. That's very beautiful how they think about what a gift and what influence a gift can have on one person and others.
Yeah, you said it last week. There's a gift of being wealthy, of having money, and the question really is how does that gift translate? It translates in terms of how you use that money. And we see with our own community in Toronto and communities around the world, and thank God now Israel as well, that people who contribute to such podcasts or institutions, organizations, individuals are doing so much. It's like I may not have the time to learn Torah all the time, but if I can sponsor somebody who is teaching and learning Torah, then that is my schutz as well, right?
Absolutely. And I have to tell you, if I would have to choose one thing which really touching my heart in Israel, and I'm not talking about the Holy Land and the religious side of it, is to see the voluntarism of individuals who take it upon themselves. Sometimes they start with no grants from the government, just by good people who support initiative. You go to Israel, you have Yad Sarah. Okay, Yad Sarah is the place where you can get every possible medical equipment for free.
Yeah.
It's not from the government. It's one person, Uri Lopliansky, was the mayor of Jerusalem. He became the mayor of Jerusalem only after he established this. He started it very little after he saw that his father needed a wheelchair and a cane, and he developed it. Today it's organization of tens of thousands of people who are helping others. Who
Yes.
started it? One person. I'll tell you another organization that I try to contribute from time to time. It's called Leket Israel,
Mhm.
by a guy who married a girl from Toronto, actually. And he himself founded a whole organization that take food that lost in restaurants or in army bases, and they are left over. So instead of throwing them to the garbage, he have today like tens of trucks that send it to poor people who cannot prepare even sometimes a proper meal. He organized people who are coming to Israel, and they are harvesting all kind of vegetables, if it's cherry tomatoes to cabbage, everything. It became a whole organization. Take Shalva, for example, a person from Vancouver, actually, who build for kids that really have special needs. One of the leading institutions in the world, and it all comes from regular people who saw the needs, who raised up and said, "I am going to do it. I'm not waiting for the government. I'm not going to beg the ministry. I will do it." And the wonderful, wonderful Jewish people are supporting it. And to go to Shalva or to see what Leket are doing or what Yad Sarah is doing, you feel the power of the Jewish community, the power, the unbelievable power, the people who are doing, the people who are supporting, the people who are participating. To me, this is Israel of 2025.
Yeah, kol hakavod. That's wonderful. I want to add to that too that Viaha, which is an organization that I established in 1996. It's very, very vibrant today, and they're doing an outstanding job of working on the streets of Toronto to help the homeless and help the impoverished. But way back when we first launched Viaha in 1997, one of the things that we did was international work. And we would go to places like Guyana, South America, and there we would bring with us hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of pharmaceuticals that had been donated from such organization or companies as Apotex and Nova Farm, Jewishly owned. And we would set up medical clinics in the rainforests of Guyana. And I remember a story whereby there was a young man who used to carry around his sister on her back all the time because unfortunately she had an issue, a medical issue, which did not allow her to walk. And that was very problematic both for him and for her. You can imagine. So what we decided to do was to take medical equipment to Guyana with us at that time. And one of the things we took was canes, as you mentioned. We took walkers, as you talked about. And we went to this young man. We said, listen, here, take what you need. If you need the wheelchair, if you need a walker, if you need a cane, take it, whatever you need. And indeed, he took it. And the next time we visited there, she was walking around on her own. And you think to yourself, this is why we live. This is what we are here for. I just want to mention, too, in this light, and then we're going to launch into the Parsha, that many years ago, Viaha was in Zimbabwe, in rural Zimbabwe. We were working out of the Howard Hospital, which was in Glendale, a very countryside place, not very many resources. People would have like 6 cents a year worth of medical care. One of our doctors, Dr. Rachel Spitzer, she delivered conjoined twins who were attached. Long and short of it is we brought them to Toronto through the Herbie Fund to the Sick Kids Hospital, and the doctors there separated them and did so in a way which worked. Today, these kids are, 23, 22 years old. They're living productive lives. And soon on my podcast, I'm going to be interviewing those kids.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow. Unbelievable, eh?
Chillings. Wow. Amazing.
We live such beautiful lives. We have such opportunities, rabbis. And thank you for pitching those organizations. I know all of them, and they're just outstanding at what they do. Outstanding.
And as I say, the most important thing, it comes as, from the ground.
Yeah.
No one asked them to do it. They decided,
Yeah.
and immediately the power of the Jewish community just raised this project to unbelievable size.
Proud to be a Jew, man. Proud to be a Jew.
Absolutely.
Keep your eyes open and see what the needs are and just go for it. Yesterday, I interviewed Rav Yoni Rosensweig, who's a first cousin once removed of mine. He is has become a halachic expert in mental health, and he wrote a sefer on it recently, and we discussed it in a podcast which has already been released. I asked him, why did you go this route? He said, I'll tell you what. I had a congregant, he was a pulpit rabbi as well, who came to me with questions about mental health, and then another one. And I went to the sources, and I realized there weren't too many sources on halacha and mental health. He said, so I'm the type of person, when I see that there's a dearth or a lack of information within Judaism, within halacha, I go down that route. And he started to study about it, and ultimately he became an expert in that area. And some of the questions that we dealt with yesterday were incredible, Rabbi, absolutely incredible. God forbid someone has mental health issues and they need to be on their phone, because what it does is it deflects away some destructive thoughts that they're having. Can they do that on Shabbat? That's one of the questions. Another question we dealt with was a woman who was a nida. She was within her menstrual cycle. She was very depressed, and she felt very alone, even with her and her family. She needed a hug. She needed to be held by her husband. And she asked the rabbi, what can I do within this time when I'm not supposed to be touching my husband? He said, by all means. He went through a whole halachic, backwards and forwards, a shakla v'taryag, and he figured out, okay, you can hug for these means. But anyways, I say this because open your eyes to what's around you, see what's lacking, and like the rabbi said, as they do in Israel and here, is pick up on it and run with it and create something that's constructive for the Jewish community, for the Jewish world, and for the world in which we share.
So, I want to raise the question, although I know that we are short on time. Why do you think, indeed, in the very rich literature of responsa, for example, we find very little about mental issues? I will suggest few ideas. Number one, people were ashamed to admit that they have mental health. But something caused me to think that maybe the reason is that there were less mental health issue. Is that possible?
I don't think so. I mean, we actually didn't touch on the percentages today versus many years ago. One thing we actually did talk within that podcast was, I said to him, is Orthodox Jewry, is halakha conducive to being OCD? In other words, we are told that we have to wash our hands regularly within the course of a day. We have to repeat and repeat and repeat tefillot 3 times a day, and then the next day as well. And we discussed that issue. So go to the podcast and you'll hear whether, in fact, OCD would be more found within a halachic world or not. I won't give you the answer.
Listen, I'll tell you one story about this. About like 7-8 years ago, I went to daven in a certain shul here, I would say down south. And I saw like a boy saying, when it comes to Shema, 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 like, and someone said, wow, what a kavana he said. And I said, sir, this is not kavana. The guy has to see someone. This is OCD, a very serious one.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, people are not aware to some of the syndromes of OCD and how much it's serious, because it can lead to depression and other things, and people has to be aware of it. And again, in our society, it's, by certain circles, it's a shame to talk about these issues. But I do think, honestly, Avrum, that maybe there were less need. I think there's a support comes from the family, from the neighbors, from the community. I don't want to romanticize the old times, but I think that especially in the Jewish community, there was much more sense of like support that I think subdued the even people with mental issues were less. I'll tell you one story that I remember as a child. My grandparents lived in a small place that is called Magdiel. Today is a very fancy place. In their time, it was a place that no one heard about it. Today is Hod HaSharon. And they had a neighbor. Even as a child, I knew that something is completely wrong. And actually, he was better than his sister and his older brother. Like, this was a family that was apparently came already from Poland with a very serious mental issues. And you know what? No one knew about it. In terms of like, they did not have to be hospitalized. I'm sure that today they would be, because they could come to my grandmother, Alea Shalom, and she always, they were sitting next to the table. I was like a child. I was a little bit afraid because I understood that something is wrong here. But she took them into the house every single day, fed them, made sure that they are dressed properly. They went to work, very simple works, but somehow they were part of the community. They were part of the community with all their miserable life. I think they got more support. So obviously, I don't want to rely on one case, but I have a feeling that somehow within the Jewish community there was more support, real care, not only support. Support we have today, even more organized, but real care of one person on the other one. That's my feeling.
I hear what you're saying, but I went to yeshiva, and there were a number of Bochrim within yeshiva world who had similar challenges, and they were very, very well taken care of. One thing I will tell you is that psychiatry really, really came to the fore in around the 1980s, according to Ravioni Rosensweig and studies. Psychology a little bit later on, when psychiatry really started to be discussed and written about and studied in a very, very scientific manner, more so than previously. I think what happened was the halachic world started to catch on to that and start to realize it more so, and then starting to ask questions. There are many shalos and shuvas, questions and answers having to do with such issues. So we'll talk about that another time. We should probably dive into what we're here for today, which is Parsha and Prose. Ladies and gentlemen, the Parsha this week is Parsha Shemoth. It's the beginning of a new sefer. And the Torah portion, this Torah portion, marks the beginning of the book of Exodus and tells the story of the Israelites' enslavement in Egypt and the rise of Moses as their leader. The portion begins by recounting the descendants of Jacob who settled in Egypt, and how over time a new Pharaoh came to power who did not remember Joseph and oppressed the Israelites. The suffering of the Israelites intensified, and Pharaoh ordered the murder of Hebrew male infants. Amid this, Moses is born, saved by his mother, and later raised in Pharaoh's palace after being adopted by Pharaoh's daughter. As Moses grows, he witnesses the injustice faced by his people, leading to his flight to Midian after killing an Egyptian taskmaster. Shemoth sets the stage for the dramatic events that follow, including Moses' encounter with God at the burning bush, fascinating sugya, where he's commanded to return to Egypt and free the Israelites from slavery. This portion lays the foundation for the liberation story and introduces themes of oppression, divine intervention, and the unfolding of God's plan for Israel. Today, we are going to study Shemoth through the lens of a beautiful book, a classic novel, The Prince and the Pauper, written by Rabbi Gamora's, one of his favorite writers. You can see the smile on his face, by Mark Twain. It's a novel that explores themes of social class, identity, and the stark contrast between wealth and poverty. The story is set in 16th century England and follows two boys who are identical in appearance, but come from dramatically different backgrounds. Edward, the Prince of Wales, lives a life of privilege, while Tom Canty, a poor boy from the streets of London, suffers from terrible, terrible hardship and neglect. By chance, the two meet and decide to switch places, leading to a series of adventures that reveals the disparity between the lives of the rich and the lives of the poor. As Edward experiences the struggles of the common people, and Tom navigates the complexities of royalty, both boys learn valuable lessons about empathy, justice, and the responsibility of leadership. Twain's tale is a satirical commentary on the inequities of society, while also offering a heartwarming story of personal growth and the transformative power of understanding. The Parsha is beautiful, and this novel is wonderful. Why did you bring the two together?
You know, every week, I hope that someone will tell me, Rabbi Gemara, really, like, this was a perfect match between the Parsha and the Prose. And Baruch Hashem, so far, I think that we were very successful. But this week's Parsha, I must tell you, again, it was that easy to choose this book. Because what do we have here? We have like a prince and we have a pauper.
Yeah.
But what Mark Twain did, he made them two different people. That, okay, there is a struggle of identities and everything, which is beautiful, and it's very much nogea, very much touches upon the identity crisis of Moshe himself. But what the Torah did, she took this idea of a pauper, a person who came from the lowest echelons of society, and the prince who come from the highest one, and combined them to one person. Isn't it great? Like Moshe Rabbeinu was, in a way, he came originally from the nation of slaves of Egypt, the lowest of the low, and became a prince. And then the prince is going to see the suffering of his brothers, the terrible condition that they live in. And then he goes back to the palace to save them. And I say it many, many times, Avrum, and you laugh when I say that. I think that Mark Twain read Parsha Shemoth and he said, how am I going to make like a modern story of this? And he wrote this book. That's my take.
No, I hear you, Rabbi. Before I launch into a question about the Parsha and the novel, you often refer to the Torah as she. Is the Torah generally referred to in female context? Is the Torah seen as a more of a woman than a man?
Yeah, we take it as a as a woman, as a bride. Um, I think that in Hebrew, where it's a very gendered language, Torah is always referred as a woman, as a feminine. I guess so.
Okay. How does the experience of Moses, who is raised in Pharaoh's palace but later becomes a leader of the oppressed Israelites, mirror the story of Edward and Tom and the prince and the pauper?
Well, in order really to understand what the responsibility of a king, you have to leave the palace. I think that's the main idea of the story. You cannot really be a monarch, a king, just by getting the title, just by having the power in your hands and authority. If you really want to be a real king, and I think this would be the advice that if Moses would meet Edward, he will say, if you want to be a real leader, you have to raise your people, not like to oppress them. Because the true leader is not the one who uses power against the people, but someone who uses his power to raise them up. And it can be education, it can be a dignity, laws, and all these are represented by Moshe Rabbeinu and the ideal world of Edward after he learns something about life through the lens of the people that he was forced to live with, because the beautiful chain of events that takes place in this novel.
It's interesting what you're saying. Mordecai in the book of Esther was considered to be a leader of the Jewish people, and you could see within the story that he stood by the gates. He had his ear to the ground. He was hobnobbing, if you will, with the regular folks to understand what their trials and tribulations were. Do you get a sense that King David also went out to the people?
King David came from the people.
Yes.
He was the emblem of a leader who came from nowhere. Remember that even in his own family, when Samuel came to find the right person, as Hashem told him, you will find him there. And all the brothers are coming to Samuel. Everyone, I guess, thought, I'm going to be the next king. And he said to the father, where is there is no one else? So he said, oh, yeah, there is someone, but, he's not like capable of being a king. And Samuel said, bring him to me. So this person was not even recognized by his own family. This person was he was a shepherd. He was apparently a fighter from a very young age. And he told Saul, King Saul, I fought against the lion and against the bear, and I can win against Goliath. This person came actually from nowhere, and he knew. And the Bible defines him that David was oset tzedakah umishpat kol chayav, because only a person who grew up in the fields, who took care over sheep and goats, a person who fought for the land against all kind of robbers and thieves, he, the person who understands the importance of law and order. He's very authentic person and very authentic leader, as David was.
I remember too when we studied the Parsha on Moshe Rabbeinu and taking a census amongst the people. I think the Midrashim or the Chachamim talk about how each and every single one of them walked in front of him, and they say he had the chance to greet them and to say hello and to learn who they were. And of course, when we think of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Zachreinu Livracha, that's what he was known for. He was known for greeting the masses, and so I think your point is well taken. In both Shemoth,
I want to tell a very beautiful story. What is a Rav and a leader? Because you have all kind of, and some of them are more liked and some of them less. But one story really, I think it's very powerful to me. And it's a story about Reb Chaim Brisker, who was the most noted Rosh Yeshiva in the 19th century. And he developed a whole method of how to learn the Talmud in depth. He was the uncle of Rav Soloveitchik from Boston and YU. So one day, a lady came to him to ask if she can fulfill, she was a widow, if she can fulfill the mitzvah of Arba Kosot in Pesach with milk.
the 4 glasses.
The 4 glasses. We have a mitzvah of wine, but wine was beyond their means, and she asked if she can fulfill the mitzvah with milk. So Reb Chaim Brisker said no, but I'm like responsible for the Gmach, the Gmilut Chasadim, the charity of the city, and I will give you money for this. And he gave her like a great amount of money. And his children came to him and said, Abba, like, she doesn't have wine. We understand that you have to give her wine, but why did you give her such amount of money, which is much more than buying wine? And he said, don't you understand? If she asks if she can fulfill the mitzvah with milk, she does not have meat for Leila Seder. Don't you understand it? Because if she would have meat, she cannot fulfill the mitzvah of drinking milk for Arba Koso. And therefore, I gave her money for the entire Seuda. Now, what do you see? Why it's so beautiful? Because really, I think we might say, okay, he could answer her, no, it's impossible. I will give you like the wine. But this person knew exactly how a table of a widow with their children looks like on Leila Seder. He imagined it. He got into her mind and her heart and wanted to solve the problem much bigger than the problem of wine and milk, the problem of poverty of this person. And I think that's a beautiful idea that expressed itself in the novel. You cannot really understand when you are a king the suffering and the misery and the poverty of a person who lives away in the outskirts of London, unless you see it yourself. And the beauty of Moshe Rabbeinu, and that's, I think, what the Torah and Hashem choose him so beautifully. What do we need here? Listen, a leader has to grow up as a leader. He has to know how to handle people, how to judge people, how to make hierarchy, then how to delegate his power to other people. Moshe Rabbeinu had to learn all this, and therefore he grew up in the palace of Pharaoh. Hashem planted him there in order to learn everything he will need to become a great leader. But at the same time, and it's so beautifully expressed in the book, you cannot be a leader if you don't understand the people that you're supposed to lead.
Yes.
And therefore, he had to come and to go. Vayetze Moshe. Moshe left the palace to see his suffering brothers. And only then he became such a great leader.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Beautiful. Lovely. Rabbi, in both Shemoth and the Prince and the Pauper, characters experience a dramatic shift in their social status. How do Moses' experience as an Egyptian prince and as a leader, slaves shape his understanding of power and justice.
Okay, that's exactly, I think, the crux of our parsha. The identity crisis that Moshe Rabbeinu is going through. There is a beautiful, beautiful pshat of Rabbi Sachs who said, the pasuk said when he saw the Egyptian torture one of his brother, his real brothers, vayifen kovachu. He looked around, vayach et hamitzri. He hit or beat the Egyptian, vayikbereu b'chol, and he buried him in the sand. So Rabbi Sachs explained it so beautifully, and he said, "Vayifen kovachu." He looked here and there, but it was not just a physical one. This was a moment when he had to decide: Am I Egyptian? Am I the prince of Egypt?
Yes.
Or am I a Jew? I belong to this oppressed nation. Vayifen kovachu. Vayach et hamitzri. Not only the Egyptian, his own Egyptianness. He beat his own side of being Egyptian and decided, in a moment of truth, I'm going to be a Jew. Vayikbereu b'chol. He buried his identity as the Prince of Egypt in the sand. From this moment on, he became a Jewish person, and the story goes on, he became their leader and savior. So this is, I think, the most important moment in the life of Moshe Rabbeinu, when you have to decide, who am I? Am I Egyptian or not? And that's exactly what happened in this identity crisis of the prince who is going to the streets and find the difficulty and start to understand that being or to grow up in the house of a monarch of his family, sometimes you ignore or don't or you are not aware of the situation of the people that you suppose to be their king.
Mm-hmm.
So it comes actually as a gift to him to grow up among people who taught him something about real life.
And throughout our learning and throughout Parsha and Prose, God willing, as we go forward, I think one of the threads that we are going to discuss very clearly is the development of Moshe Rabbeinu as a leader, because he starts out within this Parsha standing before God at the burning bush, and he says, "Who am I?" And then he kind of comes upon another reason why he can't be a leader, because he doesn't speak. He doesn't speak well. He says, "I didn't speak well yesterday, and I didn't speak well the day before." Right? And we see by the time we get to the end of the Torah, God willing, that he was a brilliant leader who was able to take really the load of the Jewish people and the development of Bnei Israel on his shoulders.
And the Midrash said he actually noticed when Moshe Rabbeinu introduced himself to Hashem, or say to Hashem, or argue with Hashem in this parsha, and he said, "Lo ish dvarim anochi." I'm not a person of words. Which I believe on the pshat level, he did not see himself as a good diplomat. Because between me and you, what kind of diplomat, when he see two people fighting, he will kill one? Diplomats try to say some words. Why are you doing it? But Moshe Rabbeinu, once he saw injustice in such a terrible way, he just killed it, and that's it. So apparently that's how I understand. Lo ish dvarim anochi. I'm not a person of words. If I'm going to be upset, I'm going to be upset. I might kill a person. So it's not a good idea that you will send me, because diplomats have to be very cool and cold.
So, Rabbi, let me ask you a question in that.
Yeah.
My dear sister Naomi, who passed away during COVID, God bless her soul. I remember once she told me, I actually had a dream about her last night, but she told me once, she goes, Moshe Rabbeinu was a man of truth, as you're saying, and Aaron, his brother, was a man of peace. So when the Jewish people built the golden calf, he figured out a way to bring peace to them and to work with them, negotiate the issue, and so on. Whereas Moshe Rabbeinu came down Mount Sinai, he smashed the tablets, right? There was no ifs, ands, or buts. It's like you think about, some of us had fathers who were very much like, this is the way it is. And some, they would sit and they would schmooze, right? And I always found that fascinating. She would ask me, who do you think you are, Avram? Do you think you're a man of peace, or do you think you're a man of truth? So let me ask you that question. Who are you?
I listen. First of all, I'm a Cohen, and many times I feel like a person of peace. Sometimes it's not good. To be honest with you, I realize it. Um, but you know what? I see my professional life. I deal with people who are very different from me. Students that comes with a very different system of values and beliefs of me. Can you imagine that I will be successful if I would be a person of truth and like zealous and say, how can you do this? And we have people like this, by the way. We do have. To me, Jewish life are more, or I would say I can identify more with Aaron, a person of peace. Now you have to understand, Aaron did not join the Egel, the golden calf. He tried to delay it, and many times a delay. Just let's think about it again. All the motivation is going a little bit down because we cannot say that Aaron did not have principles. We do at the end of the day, we must have principles. But how do you get there? How you bring other people to identify with your values, with your perceptions? To me personally, and you ask me, I find the way of shalom much more effective than fights and wars and truth. But you know what? Sometimes I'm very happy that I have people who speak the truth. They are not compromising because they teach me a very valuable lesson that sometimes we are swept away with our attempts to have shalom, and we forget that there are principles here that must be in place. So it must be a mixture, but I would say usually my first approach will be shalom and not to fight with people, even when I think they are very wrong.
Rabbi, just a side point here. How do we say yesterday in Hebrew?
Etmol,
And how do we say the day before?
shilshom,
Right, which we find in the Parsha when God was speaking to Moshe Rabbeinu.
right?
He said,
Right.
"I wasn't a good talker yesterday. I wasn't a good talker the day before." Just
Which is a beautiful word because in
yeah,
English it's yesterday, but think about shilshom. It's like the third day, ayom shlishi from today. So we have today,
today.
yesterday, and shilshom is the yom shlishi from today, which is always a beautiful way to see how the really Hebrew has lots of meaning inside every word.
What I was going to say is Ben Yehuda was the one who sort of helped Hebrew evolve from the Bible, the biblical, into modern day speech. And when you read the Parsha in Hebrew, you'll come across many words that are used today in modern conversation. If I want to say to someone, 2 days ago, I picked that up for you. You say, she'll show them. That's where it says that specifically in the Torah, right? Beautiful how he did that. Beautiful.
Absolutely.
Rabbi, in Shemoth, Moses witnesses the suffering of the Israelites and becomes determined to help them. How is his transformation similar to Tom's growth after he temporarily takes on the life of a prince and sees the consequences of leadership?
So first of all, I want to talk about Edward because I think it's more significant here, and I think that um, the lesson eventually he became again the king. He was inaugurated the king in the last moment because he was a king. He was a king. So I want first to talk about his transformation, and as we said already, being with people, see different kind of life, make you much more aware to their suffering. And he said that many times. I just picked up few of the quotes here, which I think he said, "When I am a king, they shall not have bread and shelter only, but also teaching out of books. For a full belly is little worth where the mind is starved." What a beautiful sentence, which really summarized everything about education. And think about it, that Moshe is Moshe Rabbeinu. He's not is our savior, our Goel. He's Rabbeinu. First of all, he taught us, he educated us, and we appreciate Moshe Rabbeinu as the leader. First of all, we say, not the shepherd, not the savior, not the one who brought us to our Sinai, the one who taught us the Torah, because honestly, that's the most important thing. And when I read this sentence, it resonated with me because really, many people, you were in Viaha, and it's a wonderful thing. But starving soul, like when you nourish it, when you educate a person, when you teach him how to look and to analyze the world, I find it the greatest privilege that God gave me, honestly, to help people to develop this side of them. Now, at the same time, there is a beautiful transformation of Tom. Let me read one quote that I find amazing because to me, it's the essence of the Torah. He said like this: by and by, Tom's reading wrought such a strong effect upon him that he began to act the prince unconsciously. Wow. And you know what? When you read something like this, I'll tell you what I think about it. Learning Torah by us is something very, very important. Like, this is maybe the most important mitzvah in the Torah. Veshinamtam lebanecha. You have to teach them. You have to educate them. They have to be able to read the Torah. They have to be able to understand the mitzvot of the Torah. Now, listen. Sometimes you are not going to keep the law exactly as the Torah requests you to do it. But reading about it makes you a prince. So even though you are not going to exercise it, reading and education turn your mind from a peasant to a prince, which explains so well what happened to the Jewish people over the generation. Sometimes in a terrible poverty that cannot be even described. And I'm not talking about like thousands of years ago. I'm talking about the Jews who lived on the borders of Romania and Hungary and the sometimes with gypsies and no food. But yet education was the most important thing. And they felt themselves, especially on Shabbos, as prince, not as a peasant, not as a person with the poverty. Because the value of learning, the value of a book, the values of the values that you read in a book turn you from a very simple person to a prince. And this sentence was so important for me because, you know what, I'm going to share it with my students. What we learn in the Torah, if you are going to fulfill it or not, it's your decision. But even reading about it, kosher food is not about kosher food, eat this or not eat this. But you know who has a special menu? If you go to the palace, you are not eating all kind of snacks and unhealthy food. You get the best. And the Torah want to tell us you are princess. You are noble people, and I'm going to make you a special menu. So we have to see kashrut in a very different way, not a bunch of restrictions. You cannot eat this, you cannot eat that, you will need this hechsher. No, it's about making you special, making you a prince. And prince, like great athletes, they have a special menu.
Rabbi, you're a man of words,
Well, I hope a little bit
You
more
are.
than that. But as
No,
I said,
you
about
answered.
Moshe Rabbeinu in the end of his life is Eile hadvarim asher diber Moshe. So the person who was a person who presented himself as Lo ish dvarim anochi at the end of the Torah, he was Eile hadvarim asher diber Moshe.
Do you
These are
answer?
the words that Moshe said and recorded forever.
You answer very, very important questions. You know that many people do not like Shabbat. Rabbi Yoni Rosensweig was talking about this yesterday. Shabbat comes, and I would argue, by the way, single people especially. Shabbat is very, very hard for single people. It's very quiet. And in the winter days, it's extraordinarily long, right? But when you position Shabbat in such a way that you become a prince, you become a princess, a king, a queen, it makes a lot of sense. In fact, we talk about the idea of the Shabbat queen coming to join us, Ashes Chayil. We bring the woman up in terms of who she is and what she has accomplished. And there are so many beautiful tefillot within Shabbat, which indeed speak to the point that you're making, that you're evolving, you're transforming, perhaps from a regular week, from the mundane into something which is not only very holy, but very important. And I can
Absolutely.
imagine living
And let
in
me share with you another story, Avrum. I think you just hit the nail of its head in a very precise way. I'm going to the Shabbatonim of Chat, and listen, it takes a toll. I'm for 8 Shabbatot, not with my family and not with my wife, who I really appreciate for sacrificing their Shabbat for me, because it's very important for me. Now, why it's so important for me? In the first year when I was in Chat, I went to one of the Shabbatonim and I spoke to one of the madrichim. Like you have grade 9 people and you have their madrichim in grade 11.
great
Um,
the leaders.
the leaders, like youth leaders of the group. And I spoke to one of them that I didn't know before, and I wanted to hear a little bit about his history. And in Chat we have something wonderful that is called New Stream. These are students who went to public schools and decided, for all kind of reasons, that their high school is going to be in a Jewish day school. But they come, many of them, with a lack. They don't know the alphabet. They don't know many things about Jewish holidays and so on. This guy told me he came from a Russian family, came to Toronto. They never celebrated Shabbat. They never had this appreciation to do Shabbat. They were a Jewish family. His parents wanted him to get some Jewish education, which he did not even appreciate. He wanted to continue with his friends to the public high school. And he said, I came to the Shabbaton when I was in grade 9. I met him when he was already in grade 11. And he said, that changed everything. And I asked him, what influenced you so much? And he said, you know what? The fact that we were sitting together and singing a little bit and telling stories and learning about each other, it was the first time that I felt that the Jewish community is not community, is a family. And I decided upon this moment that I will be Madrid because I want to share my experience with others. I heard it, and I knew I have to be in every Shabbaton. I want to meet these people. If I can provide them some thought, some inspiration, I want to do it. And it's a Shabbat that indeed what you say, that a Jew turned from a simple person to someone special. Mm-hmm. And we do it around the Shabbat table with our discussion. It does not have even to be Divrei Torah, just a good feeling of a group sitting together and having good time.
Beautiful. By the way, you the beautiful quote that you read from the book, here's a couple of other quotes. You may be sure that no prince has ever had a more loyal and more faithful subject than I have been. And this quote reflects Tom's deep sense of loyalty to his royal role, even though he's just poor boy pretending to be the prince, right?
Right. Very good.
Both Moses and Edward go through life-changing experiences in different ways, in different social positions. How does Moses transition from palace to the wilderness parallel Edward's transition from the streets to the palace?
Listen, Moshe Rabbeinu did not do it over a short time. We have to remember that Moshe Rabbeinu left Egypt as a prince, very young. He returned to Egypt when he was 80. We are talking about a person who was a shepherd, who lived with people not of his nation for very, very long time. Mark Twain made the whole transition happening in maybe a month or maximum a year. Here we are talking about a transition that took a lifetime. How many people in the age of 80 are appointed to be leaders? Usually in 80, you are well into your retirement, and leadership, especially of difficult people like the Jewish people, is not your dream, But this time of learning people who are different than you, bringing your wisdom. And by the way, one of the mysteries of Moshe's life is that we know nothing. What happened to him between the age of 20 to 80? So Chazal came in and suggest few ideas, but the Torah itself does not say a word about it. Because I believe that these 60 years needed for transition from the Prince of Egypt to the prince of the Jewish people or their leader. This is not happening overnight. Even if he got it right, and when he was 20, he killed the Egyptian, He tried to separate the fighting people of Bnei Israel. These 60 years were years of transition that is happening in your mind. How can I change the people around me? What are the power that I have to develop? And when he was ready, Hashem revealed himself to him and said, with all the transition you made over the last 60 years, you go back to save your brother and sisters.
Rabbi, there's a very important line within the Torah, which is Vayakam Melech Chadash, and a new king arose who did not know Joseph. There's a lot of discussion around that. Tell me a bit about that line.
I'll tell you what I think about it, and I want we all to think about it. Well, even if he was new, isn't it like, can you accept it that he didn't know Joseph? Joseph saved Egypt. I'm sure that his name was like a big name in Egypt. Well, what does it mean, Lo Yada et Yosef? But the same question I would ask about the German people. Only less than 100 years ago, they knew the Jews. Many of the Jews were officers in the army. They were bankers. They were people who run the economy of Germany, some of them on the highest position in Germany. How come that after 20 years, they don't know them? The answer is that that's exactly what the Torah wants us to know. Political grounds are shifting very quickly. The people who were yesterday your neighbors and the people who you had wonderful relationship, for all kinds of political reasons, it can change overnight. So it might be the same king or another. It might be the great name of Joseph of another. Overnight or over a short time, the person who saved Egypt was the person who actually killed it. And I'll explain what I mean, because usually we talk about Bereshit and Shemoth. What happened there? Let's remember what happened in the hunger years in Egypt. Moshe Rabbeinu purchased all the land from the Egyptians, gave it to Pharaoh in order to handle it. I mean, someone had, as countries do until this very day, sometimes in difficult times, you nationalize the private property and made it the nation, because you have to handle it properly and you want to avoid people who are taking lands from others. So Joseph meant well, and he saved Egypt. He saved not only Egypt, but he saved the Egyptians. But I'll tell you what happened 20 years later. The people who did not experience the hunger, they saw the following reality. The land of Egypt belongs to the monarch. And I have a strong feeling that that's why Vayakom Melech Chadash al Mitzrayim. I think that they rebelled against the king, because people normally cannot have their land taken away. Something that went from the grandfather to the father to yourself, and here it was taken away. No one will remember that there were years that Egypt could collapse and all the people would die. They now face a new reality. They want their land back. It doesn't come so simple, because no monarch is going to give back his land. And who was to blame? The person himself who saved Egypt. They said, oh, you see this like Jew, what he did to us. Like he took everything from us. Now they are the rich people and we are the poor people. And overnight, the whole attitude towards the Jews changed dramatically. That's happened again and again in history. And I want to say something. It might turn again here in America. The anti-Semitism about the Jews control everything and so on and so on. We have to take it very, very seriously, because this is now like in a stage of murmur, but you don't know where it's going to like explode. And when it will explode, it will happen in a very, very short time. We should read the first psukim of Sefer Shemot very, very seriously, because we cannot ignore what happened in Egypt and to think, oh, this is a story from the Torah. This happens through Jewish history again and again, and chas v'shalom, it can happen again here. We are not going to believe it. But Vayakom Melech Chadash al Mitzrayim, I don't want to say if it's Trump, Biden, or anyone else. And we don't know the influence of the world and who is going to be the king, what is going to be his agenda. We have to know that the safety and the solid ground that we experienced for many, many years can change in a very short time. And you know what? We all saw it. We all saw it. You just mentioned in the beginning that 46% of the people, they think that we are the source of the problem. Well, let me tell you, these numbers might grow and we find ourselves in a very bad situation.
Yeah, daunting thought. Daunting thought. Finally, Rabbi, just something that I was wondering about. The midwives did not kill the babies that Pharaoh instructed them to do, and the Torah says it's because they feared God. And I was wondering to myself, if one does not fear God, would they not know that killing was wrong?
You ask it after Dr. Mengele and after the experiment that some of the Nazis and some of the greatest, the truth has to be said. We still have huge corporations, some of them even pharmaceutical ones, that they have a very dark history. Um, you know what? I really want people to hear about like the contribution of IBM to the death machine of the Germans. And they were not alone. They were pharmaceutical company that asks the Germans for Jews taken from the labor camps in order to test their drugs. The stories are going on and on. These were like well-educated people. These were doctors who all took the oath of doctors to protect. And the answer is, if you don't have like Yirat Elokim, unfortunately, many bad things will happen. Will happen with no question. And the Torah said that Yirat Elokim, like the fear of the higher authority, is very important. If you want to see it in our book, I think that I also like put like one of the quotes. Can't remember where is it, but he talks about the fact that kings think that they are the source of power. I'm sorry for the English. This is like even for me, like a regular English sometimes is difficult, but this English, like because he tried to portray like the English of the 16th century. Kings cannot ennoble thee, though good, great soul, for one who is higher than kings hath done that for thee. But the king can confirm the nobility to men. So what a beautiful insight. And to me, it's like mamash the Ikar Torah is to tell every person, especially a powerful person like a king, you are not the source of authority. The source of authority is higher than you, which is very difficult message to a king to accept from the very beginning, from the first king, Nimrod, until these very days. King thinks they are the source of power. And as Mark Twain said, the job, the real role of a king is to bring, to transmit the laws of God, of divine authority to the people, to make them better.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what the Torah said. Im en yirat Elokim, if there is no fear of God, the most noble, the most educated people might turn to be barbarians. We saw it. We the Jews don't have to bring like maybe 200 years ago, this question would be in place. Today, no.
You know, I want to conclude with a story, if you don't mind. You talked about pharmaceutical companies who partnered up with the Nazis in their work. Bayer was one of those companies. They were the ones who made
Cyclone,
yeah,
Cyclone B.
the gas for the
Yeah,
ovens.
Cyclone B.
Anyways, when the genocide broke out in Rwanda in 1994, there were refugee camps that were set up in neighboring countries like Chad. My very first humanitarian operation was indeed to send some people to Chad along with some pharmaceuticals to help out there. And there were a lot of questions that cropped up when we were there. There were medical sort of tents that were set up, and both the Hutus, who were responsible for the genocide, and the Tutsis, who were murdered, up to 1 million of them were murdered, would come in. And the big question, the ethical question was, who do you take care of, all things being equal? But the real point was there was one particular drug. It's called Cipro. Many of us have taken it. It's for stomach ailments, and it's very powerful. That was required in the refugee camps. The company that made Cipro, and still does, although there are knockoffs, I understand today, was Bayer. I called up Bayer and I said, listen, I'm calling from the United Jewish Appeal where I worked at that time. My name is Avrum Rosensweig, and we're doing operations in Chad in the refugee camps to help out the Tutsis predominantly. And we need some Cipro. Okay. They said, fine. Next day we woke up. Courier comes in with a box of Cipro. A box. I got on the phone. I said, I want to tell you once again, my name is Avrum Rosensweig. I work for the United Jewish Appeal, and you sent us over a box of Cipro. That's not enough. Your responsibility is much greater than that. And I emphasized that we were a Jewish organization because they knew their history. The next day, thank God, they sent over an entire skid of the pharmaceutical, which we ultimately sent to Chad with some of our volunteers to help out the people there. And that really was the genesis or the launch of my personal humanitarian work. And it was very powerful, very powerful.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I've been playing around with AI a little bit. And I have a poll.
Excited. That's very nice, because many people, when they get a toy, they start to play with it, and then after a short time, they throw it away. But you get you like it more and more.
Give me more Lego, Rabbi. I love Lego. It goes like this. Egypt's land where Pharaoh reigns, a tale of two lives bound by chains. A prince born in a palace grand, a pauper starving in the sand. The prince, young Moses, raised in ease, yet saw his people brought to their knees. The pauper's heart is pure as gold. In poverty, his story is told. A shift of fates, the world turned round. In royal courts, where power is found. Moses' heart, the prince to be, with one bold act, set the slaves free. As Edward learned of royal plight and Tom found kingship, weights and might, so Moses, in his humble call, would rise to lead, though once so small. The prince and pauper swapped their ways in palace halls and streets of gray. Through trial, each found wisdom's light and sought to lead with justice right. From Egypt's grip, the slaves would flee, like Pauper Tom, who yearned to see the truth of what their fate could be. In justice found their liberty. Two worlds apart, yet intertwined. The lessons clear, both heart and mind. No matter birth or crown's bright gleam, in mercy lies the noble dream. Rabbi, the short video that we play at the top of this show, the
Yes.
10-second video. So that was created by Isaac Oziel. There are many Isaac Oziels in our community.
Yeah.
But this one specific one lived in my building, and he was a lovely man. And this past week, he passed away.
Oh.
Yes. And I would like to really dedicate this shiur of ours, this podcast, to his memory. He was a wonderful human being who lived for chesed. He lived for kindness. He was helping people in this building and in the neighborhood, many, many elderly people who didn't know how to manage their funds, or who didn't know how to communicate with the difficult offices that we need to call. And he was a beautiful man. And right now, the Shiva is happening. It's very, very sad because his mother had a stroke in this past summer, and he was taking care of her. So Isaac Oziel, thank you so much for contributing to our shiur, to our podcast. May you rest in peace. And thank you so much for coming our way and your contributions, not only to the Jewish world, but to the world which we share. God bless his soul. God bless his soul.
Amen.
Any concluding words, Rabbi?
The concluding words are, I would like to think about ourselves. No matter where we are, the prince. And if we are not the prince, we can turn to be prince. Even if you think that you were not born and your affiliation with the Jewish community is not so strong, no, teach yourself to be a prince.
Mm.
You belong to us, you belong to the community, and you can become a great person no matter what. This is one lesson. And to the prince himself, and I'm talking about myself, the rabbis, the leaders, we have to be more aware of the needs of our community. And Alevai that Hashem will give all of us the wisdom, the ability, the empathy to really lead. And good leadership means to understand and to carry with our people, with our congregants when they need it.
Ah, kol hakavod. You taught me so much, by the way, in this podcast of ours, in this shir, about the concept of being princely, in particular on Shabbat. And when I say, Rabbi, that you're a man of words, of course, not only a man of words, but there are so many gems that you bring forward to our listeners and viewers and your students and people in
Thank you.
shul. And I wish you yeshikoch for that. And kol hakavod.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so
Thank
much
you.
for that. And thank you, mostly thank you to your parents.
And my teachers, I always have to say, here and there, I got like wonderful, wonderful teachers. Some of them taught me directly, some of them inspired me. So let's not forget them too. Teachers have a major, major part in our life. I want to tell you a story. I was in a wedding not long ago of a very distant um, family member of us, but we became very, very close because the grandparents were very close in Auschwitz. They worked in the same labor camp together, so we keep touch until now. And you know what really captured my heart? She invited all her past teachers to the wedding.
No.
She felt they should be there. The person I am is the product of so many people, especially my teacher, and they came and they appreciated it because many, many times people forget that teachers have a huge influence on our life.
Rabbi, mention a teacher's name that comes to mind.
I will tell you about my most beloved teacher. He did not teach me Torah, but in a way he did. Was Dr. Klein. Now listen to this because this is amazing. Do we have 2 minutes time?
We have 2 hours if you like.
Okay. I can now, 50 years after, I have my first lesson with him, repeat almost every word of the lesson. I was like mesmerized to my seat. It was grade 11. He was a physics teacher. And he spoke about like a very vivid description of helicopter flying and how you can locate his position every moment. But he did it with heavy Hungarian accent that wow, this guy is from a different planet. He was at the time, we just learned afterwards, I think 84 or 85 years old, already had his career behind him. And as the year progressed, he told us stories. He told us when he was very young person, he was a student in the Vienna University. And one of the person in the university was not no other than Albert Einstein. And he always said, guys, I am going to explain you relativity, but listen to this. I don't know, I cannot understand relativity, he said, but I am the best one in the world to explain it. And like we were looking at each other, what does it mean? And you know what? His classes on relativity, I'm telling you, until this very day, I can tell you exactly how he described the concept of time and mass, and it was just phenomenal. So he is certainly, certainly the teacher that I will remember forever, and I took a lot from his personality and devotion to education. No question about it, but I was very lucky to have some other ones too.
Ah, fine. So we'll dedicate this show to his memory as well.
Yes.
Yeah, very good. Do you understand relativity?
I want to meet the person who will tell me that he fully understands it. I think I can repeat many of the principles and I get a sense of it, but it's so phenomenal that really a great mind like Einstein, maybe they really could understand it. Or, to understand physics is not just to, the E equal to MC square. It's really to live it, to see the world differently. I'm not at this stage.
Are you a science man at all?
I love science. There is a good friend of mine that bring me sometimes in the middle of Kriyat Torah, the American science or discovery or whatever it is, and I love to read them from cover to cover. I find it fascinating. But to be a scientist is a great honor which I cannot bestow upon myself. Scientist is I treat it with a great respect. So I wouldn't say that.
Okay.
I love science, but I'm not a scientist.
Fine. We'll touch upon that in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching and for listening. We remind you that Parsha and Prose comes your way every single week, God willing. And next week, we're doing something marvelous. We'll be discussing the Parsha, which is Viaha, and we'll be doing it through a book by Leon Uris, which is called Exodus. Outstanding choice, Rabbi, and just an excellent, excellent book. And Parsha just full of thoughts and ideas.
In reality, I had like to choose. Exodus should be like the first Parsha, which is Exodus, Shemoth, or the second one. So I had like hard time around this one, and when I looked again in the book, I decided no, Viaha might be a better choice. Okay.
Yeah,
so,
we'll have to discuss the machinations that you go through in order to determine, the accompanying book, and we generally do in the podcast. Folks, I think one of the lessons that you should take away from this discussion today is the importance of being princely and rising up to that point and taking advantage of many of the things that Judaism has to offer in that light. And the other very poignant thing that Rabbi talked about today is the idea that Vayakam Melech Hadash, a new king arises, and one never knows when that new king arises and when he doesn't know Joseph, when he doesn't know us. And we have to be aware of that, and we have to work on it. And we need to discuss that more and more and more, the anti-Semitism in the world, the recent ADL report, and to respond to it, not just the institutions and organizations, but we as individuals. So in the future, as we speak, we will bring in ideas to you. And one of the ideas, Rabbi, that I had throughout our podcast today in that light was to create a panel discussion amongst some leadership and amongst just regular folks within our community, and to talk about the level of anti-Semitism and the concept of Vayakam Melech Hadash. So, you were going to say?
I just want to say thank you because, in the beginning of, before we started the podcast, I told you that I'm short in time and
Yes,
people are outside my door now, but it was a pleasure to talk to you, Avrum.
And it was a pleasure to talk to you too, Rabbi. And you should have a good Shabbaton and a great Shabbat. And to all of our viewers and listeners, Shabbat Shalom. Until we meet again, Sei gesinnt. Thank you.
Besorot tovot. Bye.